Okay.
All
Okay.
right.
Take it away.
Good afternoon. Chair Price is traveling today, so I'll be chairing the meeting. Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday. And Sebastian, if you could please start us off with roll call.
Yes, Vice Chair Hammond. Kick it off with Carolyn Schofield.
Present.
Ed Lopez.
Present.
David Harris.
Here.
Jen Dirks.
Here.
Gary Johns.
Present.
I like your wall color, Gary. Sorry. Matthew Vasilakis.
Here.
Let's see here, Secretary Webb
Here.
and Vice Chair Hammond.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Okay, great. Are there any public comments that are not on the agenda?
Yes, Vice Chair, we have one from a new member of our team. I will let her introduce herself, but she's here on the screen.
Great.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Rita De La Fuente, and I just wanted to take a moment to introduce myself as the new Director of External Affairs for San Diego Community Power. My focus will be on strengthening relationships and trust in the community and establishing our tone and the way we interact with the public. This is my third week. It's been and it will continue to be a major learning process, but the team has been extraordinary and I'm just so excited to be a part of it. And I look forward to meeting all of you. I've had the pleasure of meeting some of you in person, but I really look forward to working with you all. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Rita. Welcome to the team, and we all look forward to working with you. If we can be a resource for you, please don't hesitate to reach out.
And me as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments either submitted or does anyone in the public have a non-agenda item to comment on?
Gonna give folks a minute if they want to raise their hands. And then let me check. No submitted responses, Vice Chair.
Okay, let's move on. Sebastian sent out the agenda earlier this week. Does anyone have any items that need to be withdrawn or reordered on the agenda? All right, let's jump into it.
Alrighty. The first item up is receive a presentation on the fundamentals of energy procurement. Sorry, I see a hand up.
Yes, David.
Yeah, I just wanted to say before we start this presentation that one of the reasons we requested a presentation on procurement was because of the Jacamba project. And the group that I volunteer with, San Diego 350, we were hearing a lot of feedback from the community saying, wait, this is a terrible project and it's going to destroy our community. And then we had a meeting with team leaders in San Diego 350, and I really advocated strongly to support this project when it came to the Board of Supervisors because it was a valuable project for San Diego Community Power and necessary for our long-term financial stability. So I was able to convince our team leaders that this was an important project. But I thought it would be good to learn more about the procurement process and really how San Diego 350 makes decisions about which types of projects to invest in. So I just thought I'd introduce the topic before we got into the presentation.
Thank you,
Yeah.
David. I appreciate your comments at the last meeting. I echoed them saying that I think it is important for us as a community advisory committee to hear about the projects before they go to the board, and appreciate Sebastian and the staff working with us on that and adding it to our scope of work, which we'll touch on later today. But I think it's important to have another platform for the community to learn about these projects and weigh in. So I'm excited to learn more today about it.
Yeah, we're happy to work with our CAC, and yeah, David, this item comes from you. You had requested it, and I worked with our staff to put it together. really, I guess at this point, I'll pass the baton to our Director of Power Services, who you can see here. He's the one who put it together. So I'll give him the credit. But at this point, I'm going to stop sharing so he can share the slide deck, which will then be shared afterwards with you all. So Mr. Vosberg, please take it away.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sebastian, and thanks all for having me today. Yeah, Sebastian, thanks for blaming me, throwing me under the bus too for the presentation here. Happy to discuss, and I think your comments, I think are echoed on our side as well. I think to the extent we are a community-focused organization here and want to be doing our best to not only combat climate change, do our best to reduce emissions, but also make sure that we're aware of community impacts of our projects. I think involving you all and getting feedback from you all, in our procurement process. I'll leave it to you all and others above my pay grade to decide exactly how. But to the extent we can start conversations and engage and get feedback and make this more of a conversation, I think there's a lot of value there for us as well. So certainly welcome input, and then we want this to be like I said, more of a conversation. So I'll start off today with an introduction. Again, Sebastian came to me and said, hey, they want to learn about energy procurement. And I thought, my goodness, those poor people, do they have nothing better? But happy to share, things that I've kind of picked up over the years and kind of our strategy here. I will say a lot of it is technical and dense and complex, and I'm sorry in advance, but also happy to again, we won't get into the details on everything today. We're probably aiming here for 15, maybe 20 minutes total. We might just scratch the surface. So if this becomes a recurring session and we pick up different topics here and there, as we have time and dig in, further down the road, I think that's fine as well. But what I've got here today is kind of just really high level introduction to kind of wholesale power. And to kind of the CAISO and the CAISO market, and then also just kind of high level fundamentals that kind of drive our procurement process. We certainly have other decks we can work with here as well to kind of our internal processes, kind of some of the more formalized solicitation process and protocols and all that as well. We can maybe get into later, but again open to feedback and conversation and questions. So I'll share my screen here in a minute, pull up this presentation, but feel free to make it conversational, and as you guys have questions or feedback afterwards or more things you want to dive into later, please let me know. And again, I promise this won't be the I hope unless I'm voted out. I hope this isn't the only time we all meet and we all have a chance to discuss this. So would be happy to come back again and do something similar. I will share my screen if I can find a way to do it. There we go. I think this is just sharing, I think, the right window. Hopefully you guys can see my PowerPoint presentation. And is that, can I full screen that, or is that good enough for you guys? I think when I usually full screen, it gets all thrown off. Is that good as is?
I think it's good as is.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, let's see. So the first section here is just a bunch of maps. So again, admittedly, just want to set the groundwork here again as kind of and start really far out. We'll start zooming a little bit. I don't need to spend too much time on this, but just to kind of orient us here for where we are and what we're doing on the power grid, kind of wholesale power. And again, the subtitle here is overview of the wholesale power grid, but just to again really set the stage way broader than it needs to be. We'll get local here in a minute. Is we've got the U.S., really North America, in three different power grids: the Western Interconnect, the Eastern Interconnect, and then Texas. Of course, Texas being Texas wants to do it itself. Quebec does have its own up here as well, but we have three really in the United States. And of course, being here in California, we were part of WEC, the Western Interconnect here, so that's really what we're talking about. But just to again set the framework here, three independent power grids. So, but to the extent that we have each one of them is actually interconnected, the grids for each of these states within all those different interconnections are all synchronized, are all spinning together at 60 hertz all at the same time, but not really interconnected between each of them. And again, I'll try to spin through this pretty quickly. WEC itself, again, the Western Electricity Coordinating Council here is the 11 westernmost states and a couple provinces up in Canada. And again, just to set the stage here, it's all interconnected. You can see all the transmission lines here throughout. Obviously, California up into the northwest, a ton of power in the northwest, and obviously a bunch coming from the desert southwest as well. But we really are an interconnected grid. There are pros and cons, obviously, to that. But from the from the purpose of diversity and resource sharing, and there are again a lot of pros being able to share based on who has excesses, who needs power, who's in a long position, a short position, to be able to blend over larger areas certainly has some benefits. So again, I'll keep moving. The California ISO is the independent system operator. As we zoom in a little bit here, you can see the ISO is the yellow, that they're kind of run the grid, so to speak, or run the market for most of California, and that's here in the yellow. They also are expanding, so it's kind of been, the whole WEC is the interconnection. There are different balancing authorities within each interconnection, and again, I'll try to not get too far in the weeds too early, but each balancing authority basically balances their load and supply for their area, for their authority. So California, the California ISO is one balancing authority, and these are a number of other balancing authorities again out here as well, that are all starting one way or another, start working with each other and talking to each other. So it's been very outside of CAISO, a very bilateral market for a long time. So obviously there are seams, you can import and export from one to the other, but there hasn't been a whole lot of integration, I guess. But the California ISO now, through the EIM, which is the Energy Imbalance Market, has started spreading out. Certainly not in the day ahead yet, but in the real-time market, again, sharing excess energy here and there to try to reduce costs and with that emissions. So the ISO, the California ISO is branching out and again expanding into this EIM market. So there's becoming a little more coordination, I guess, throughout the West. This is a pricing map of the CAISO market, and again the EIM. Just again, we're not going to get into the weeds, but just to kind of share what's going on in the market. Each one of these little dots on the map is a different pricing node for each of the market. Within the market. So obviously the California node here, you can see the California map, which are all the highlighter or the nodes with white circles around them. That's kind of the ISO market itself. And so there's the day ahead market, the real-time market, and the real-time market, which is 15-minute, and there's a 5-minute market for each one of those. But each one of those nodes has a different price for every hour of the day in the day ahead market. And then in the 15-minute market, it gets a new price, then the 5-minute market, a new price as well. So if you're a data person, if you're if you're into data, call me. We've got a job opening for you. And there's tons of pricing, tons of data, tons of analysis to be done. Obviously not all that impacts us necessarily, being Southern California load entity, not all those apply to us, but there are a lot of dynamics at play. And again, just trying to review here before we get into the local part, just really the complexity involved in the grid here, that each one of these nodes, it always kind of astounds me, especially as the CAISO grows, that we've got thousands and thousands of nodes added as they grow, and you just got algorithms kind of solving for the most efficient outcome at each one of those, for the system, but also each one of those nodes. Again, every day, every hour, every 15 minutes, and then every 5 minutes, it's kind of re-optimized. So that's just to lay the groundwork that, that obviously we are, in Southern California, we kind of pay one price for our load that we buy out of it. It's kind of aggregated throughout the San Diego, San Diego gas and electric transmission area. So not all these nodes are applicable to us, but again, just a high level overview of kind of what's going on the wholesale market. So that's the maps section. Now we've got charts. And again, sorry, this is very, very technical, but just to go over high level kind of load and generation and then, kind of market price dynamics. And again, all this is kind of context for where we're going, for what we're doing. And I hope it'll make sense in a minute when we get into kind of what we're thinking about and what we're trying to do as we buy energy, right? So the demand charts here, these lines actually, it's coincidental, but they're the same color as the slide deck template, so it's perfect. But the daily load chart here in the top right is just to show how much the California ISO, so this is the California total, how much load changes day to day. So this is just one day left to right, hours 1 to 24. And you can see, obviously, probably no surprise, right? When we're sleeping at 4 a.m., no one's using too much power. We're not using a whole lot. But then as we wake up and turn on coffee pots and go to work and turn the lights on and then start turning on AC, obviously load, we start using a lot more energy throughout the day. So this is just kind of a typical day. This is September, so it's probably a little peakier than maybe an average day, but this is kind of what we're managing around. Is we need to serve load and supply this to customers in the state, and obviously for us in San Diego, on some shape like this. So it's dynamic, it's variable, and what we try to do is obviously match our generation to our load to meet that shape. What I've got below as well also is just kind of an illustrative shape for SDCP currently. This is kind of a right now. So again, this is a different shape from what we expect next year as residential customers come in, but kind of like the commercial industrial shape, it looks a little different. But just to show how much it varies, this is a week, right? And you've got Monday through Friday, left to right, and then Saturday, Sunday drop off. So it just, as we're looking to buy power, obviously, things vary a ton, but just weekday, weekend matters. And then obviously during a heat wave, everyone runs our AC, and so we see loads jump 10, 15% as well. So big part of what we're doing, obviously, on the procurement side is just making sure that we have enough energy to serve the load and that we're not exposed to the market. And I'll keep moving here. Again, kind of similar themes here, but load serving entities, that's us, LSE. That's all utilities, CCAs. We need, if you're a CAISO market participant, you need to buy all of your power from the ISO. So you can't, you can't just kind of buy your net load, or you can't serve yourself and then go, buy the balance. You need to buy everything from the ISO. But so because prices move around a good bit, and we'll get into that in a minute, we're exposed to volatility and what we call price risk as prices move around a lot. So because we need to buy all, 600, 700 megawatts currently of our load from the ISO, and that price could be $20, it could be $500. So in order to reduce that risk, we then sign power purchase agreements or power contracts, and then sell that energy into the market, so it gets to kind of net out against what we're looking to buy. So obviously forecasting our load is critical, so we know how much we need to buy, right? So we're not buying too much, buying too little, because that'll create exposure to market prices as well. And again, matching generation then to purchases is really what we're looking to do. So again, some of these are just kind of typical Q3, summer shapes for daily shapes here for the total ISO. But again, it's really, I think, helpful to see here too. This is like last September, that September 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. You look at how much this changed day to day, right? The ISO went from about 37 gigawatts of total load to 47. So a huge swing, I don't know, 30% up from one day to the next, just because of either, different variations in temperature or energy usage. Market prices, and again, sorry, I think we're already probably behind on time, even though I'm trying to blow through this as quickly as I can. But market prices here, really, in the top right chart here, the takeaway is that these prices here are, again, left to right, hours 1 to 24, average for last summer. You can see prices are pretty low, pretty stable, from midnight until about hour 14, about 2 p.m. And then in the evening, good luck, and there's a lot of variability, a lot of volatility. And this is the average price can bounce up to 150 megawatts. So the takeaway here, again, I think that we learn pretty quickly, and one of the most important lessons, unfortunately, is that it makes sense they're correlated. We've got high prices here, hour 18, 19, 20, 21, obviously when our load is highest too, right? So it makes sense, supply and demand, right? There's more demand, so prices are going to rise. But that really is the kind of the critical period for us. Is making sure we cover our load risk here in the evening when load is highest, and then when prices are highest as well. Generation, again, there's a whole lot going on here. You know, I will say, you know, there's this new net demand. I say new, sorry, it's not that new. You guys have heard about the duck curve and net demand and all that, I'm sure, for a while. But the CAISO now is really looking at kind of the net demand. If you net out the renewables, you know, what's left to be used with dispatchable resources. A lot of that is fossil. You know, what are we doing and how are we going to meet that? And I will say we've done a great job decarbonizing the afternoon, right? We really have, with the solar build out we've had in California has been incredible. All of this, you know, the difference here is solar generation, and we've, you know, that's all generation that would have been met back in the day with you know, combined cycle fossil fuel natural gas plants, you know, and so we've done a great job, you know, kind of removing all that generation and decarbonizing that. The next step here, you know, you can kind of see the solar shape during the day. Down here, again, this is all hour 1 to 24 throughout the day. When it's sunny, so, you know, solar's doing great. Unfortunately, we still have this evening peak that's almost as high. It's not quite as high as the gross peak here, but the net peak is almost as high. And we have trouble, you know, using solar to meet that. So you can see this is from last summer. You know, you can see this natural gas line very low throughout the day, and then it rises right back up into the evening. So there's this evening peak period that's kind of the next frontier, the next challenge for us. We've decarbonized daytime. How do we decarbonize the evening, right? And so I think that's you know, the next challenge for us. Those of us who want to decarbonize, I think that's really where we're trying to get, right? We've got a bunch of price risk there, so it's front of mind. But it's also, you know, from a carbon risk perspective, how do we also decarbonize that as well? So, you know, this evening ramp is kind of what they call it here. You know, this period kind of ramping right back up here as load is increasing and then solar's coming offline. Currently, that's a ton of natural gas. You can see some hydro as well, some imports. Wind does pick up a little bit then as well, but that really is kind of, as I said, kind of the next frontier. So the good news is I think energy storage is on the way, right? So energy storage, whether it's in front of the meter, behind the meter, can shift a lot of that solar in the evening, kind of extend that solar day. Whether it's reducing load by being you know, kind of a DER or a behind the meter resource, or just on the wholesale side, shifting a whole bunch of that solar into the evening. But that really is what we're looking to do. And energy storage is coming. We've got a couple of gigs of it now, but we still got a lot of work to do. You know, natural gas right now is up to 18 gigs, you know, last summer. So we got still a lot of work to do, and it's kind of an all hands on deck to keep moving as much as we can that the fossil out of the stack. Speaking of the resource stack, again, this is kind of just where we stand. Again, this is last summer. It's a pretty good, you know, indicative of the summer. I realized we did have a couple heat waves and a couple of price events in there, but just to kind of look at, you know, day by day what we're looking at. You know, obviously we've got the baseline of nuclear that'll be retiring here in a couple of years. And then, you know, the wind shape, again, the wind shape is really good. It matches up, especially in the evening here. And then hydro, when you have it, again, we used to, I think, rely on a good bit of hydro, and the drought the last few years has kind of made us rethink those. You know, the median case, you know, has now become the kind of the worst case. So it used to be really reliable and just you know, a huge resource for us in California. It still is to some degree, but you guys have seen the photos of I don't know, Lake Oroville, Lake Mead, right? I mean, you know, they're at the point where they're you know, almost no longer operational at the end of the summer because they're out of water. So again, just to look at kind of what we're trying to do here. We've got a lot of imports, again, a ton of solar, which again, all this is generation that would have been fossil back in the day. So we've reduced all that. The next step really is to keep moving that solar into the evening peak. And that's kind of what we think about. And again, because that's high priced, and that's what keeps me awake at night is market price risk, is how can we meet that risk? And again, use as little fossil fuel resource as possible. And this is to zoom out a little bit. Previously, we looked at daily charts. Again, sorry for all the charts. This is part of like a 200-page presentation or report if you want to read it in your spare time over the weekend on the CAISO website. Kind of reviewing last summer, but just the other takeaway too is that we've got these like daily or hourly variations. There's also a ton of seasonal variation as well on a lot of these kind of macro trends. So you know, weather, climate, obviously huge impacts, but you know, we usually have enough supply to get through normal periods. But once you see a heat wave coming across, you know, and kind of this heat dome we had, earlier this summer, the heat events we had last summer, and it's coincident across kind of all of WEC, right? Is tying back to what we talked about earlier. When you see this map and you see heat in Portland and heat in Phoenix and heat in California, that's where we see these drastic events happen. It's one thing when, oh yeah, SoCal's hot, but Pacific Northwest has tons of hydro and it's still cool up there. That's no big deal. They can just shoot us some extra power, vice versa, right? We can all kind of share in different periods. But when you get coincident heat across all of WEC, there's only so much you can do, and just prices everywhere just rise like crazy. So that's kind of what we've seen here. Again, some of these events, this one here, I think is just the CAISO prices from 1920. February, right? February of 2019 was a pretty large cold event, right? So that just sent prices to the roof, which would otherwise be pretty calm. And then August, obviously last summer in August with the blackouts, similar there. And the same thing here, looking at just July, August, and September. We have the CAISO prices. Palo Verde is in the desert Southwest, and you can see that those, we thought $500 pricing was bad in California, but it jumped to $1,600 in the desert Southwest. So the moral of the story is there's a ton of volatility. I'll say it's almost random. It's not quite random, but there's a ton of volatility and price risk in our business and what we do. And so basically every day we're trying to sign contracts to meet this load and reduce this risk. And that's the 15-minute version of what we're solving for. I'll keep moving. I'll apologize, Chair and Sebastian, for running longer than I should, but I'll keep moving here as quickly as I can. So fundamentals of what we're doing. High level, there's a few different, and probably coming off the previous charts might have reordered this, right? Risk management is probably our one of our main goals, right? It's why we sign forward contracts in the first place, right? And before people were concerned about environmentalism and renewable energy, this was why you built natural gas turbines. This is why you sign long-term contracts. It was just you wanted to reduce risk and price volatility. So that is one of our large drivers, especially as a startup CCA, right? We're very concerned about market price risk. We want to make sure we are not exposed to extreme events and extreme pricing. So that's one of our huge drivers. I'll work backwards here, right to left. Obviously, the other one is just cost and value, right? We need to be competitive. We need to provide affordable rates, and to the extent we've got a competitor in the region as well, we need to make sure we're at least competitive with our IOU and the rates they charge their customers as well. And then compliance, obviously, but we could spend like a whole hour or maybe a half day session on just the slide itself. But compliance obviously then is the final one, where we have so many mandates coming down from the state in a number of different ways. We have renewable portfolio standards, obviously that's the targets that I think we're all familiar with. Luckily for us, that's not too much of a binding constraint because our voluntary targets are above that. So if you meet SCCP's voluntary 50% renewable targets, you're going to meet the RPS requirements easily. But then we do have long-term contracting requirements as well. So 65% of our renewable contracts starting this year have to be long-term contracts and have to be delivered over 10 years. So that certainly isn't that big a deal, I think, for any CCA that's established. It's added one level of complexity for us, I think, as we've had to get up and running. And there's usually a 2-year development cycle by the time you sign a deal for it to be built and sited, built, developed, financed. And online, so that we've kind of had to accelerate that in a few different ways here. So it's kind of been a binding constraint for us as we look to build a portfolio in the near term. And then obviously we've got resource adequacy. You guys have probably heard about that as well. It's kind of the insurance policy, so to speak, but just the requirements that we have with the California Public Utilities Commission and the ISO, the Independent System Operator, to make sure that we have enough resources available, so we don't have power shortages or we don't have energy blackouts like we had last summer. But the resource adequacy program is meant to ensure that we do have enough supply to serve load when we need it. And then we do also have this new integrated resource planning process that this is the ISO, or sorry, the PUC as well. And that's really looking longer term. We haven't had much of an integrated resource planning process, and I'll try not to get on my soapbox here for too long, but the RA program really has been a 1-year looking forward process for as long as it's been around. and there hasn't really been like a comprehensive, integrated, coordinated resource planning process at the PUC. So that's been started now, thankfully. And really, I think we're kind of in this short position as a state because we kind of got behind the ball and we're, really only had requirements for resources to be online 2021, 22, and 23, as a lot of resources were coming offline. So in hindsight, would have been good to start that a couple years sooner, but regardless, here we are. And we've got those requirements as well to have new resources online down the road. The one other note, and sorry, I know, again, moving really quickly through this, I apologize, and I'm happy to come back and go in more depth or take follow-ups. But the other note here, just on the cost and the value here, I think it's always surprising to folks who or friends I chat with, right, who say, oh, you've got a $300 million budget. Oh man, that must be so easy. You've got so much money to spend, right? And in some ways, yeah, well, we do bring in a lot of revenue from customers, and we do spend a lot of that on energy. I mean, it's 90%, if you look at it here, of our fiscal year 22 budget is power supply is $284 million of 315. The unfortunate part is that that's based on a forecast of how much just the power is going to cost, right? It's not like there's really like much of that is really kind of excess. We, because so much of it is already committed to our power forward costs, to our hedges, to our RA requirements. There isn't a whole lot that's really like incidental, right? So we have currently $18 million forecast for next year to be our net position for fiscal year 22, which is 5% of our total revenue. And we are working towards a reserve target of 90 days cash on hand, which is about 75 million. So and again, this is kind of just one of the high level things that we try to balance is we want to go spend money on renewable projects, on programs, on projects, on everything. But everything we do, any dollar we spend that's kind of above market or above expectation is a dollar coming out of our reserve contribution and kind of coming out of our net position. So, I know sometimes I guess it's a tough position to be in, right? Because in an ideal world, yeah, we could spend every dollar we have on new projects, on kind of above market costs, or more experimental technologies or more expensive technologies. But especially in the position we're in now, where we're still trying to build reserves to get a credit rating and to be able to sustain market risk, like we talked about before, this 75 million it's a target, right? But we're going to need, what is that, 3-4 years of solid reserve accumulation to get to that point. And so there's a trade-off of every dollar we spend that's above market, is then a dollar that we're not putting towards reserves and putting towards just establishing a sustainable organization with the credit rating. So those are kind of the goals. The products here, I think, are pretty straightforward. There's certainly a lot going on, right? On the renewable side, we've got long-term renewable energy, short-term renewable energy, and then carbon-free hydroelectric. It's not technically renewable, but we do, it's environmental carbon-free product. So hopefully you'll forgive me for including that in the renewable energy section. We do have a number of financial hedges as well, right? So we're 50% renewable. The other 50% is system power or is purchased out of the grid. So we need to sign fixed price contracts for those as well. And that, we're looking to reduce our market risk. That's the financial hedge portion of it. So whether it's fixed price contracts, energy storage contracts, just system power purchases, or then financial options as well, whether that's swaps or options or whatever. Again, there's so much volatility in the market from the charts we saw earlier. A lot of people like to trade around that and try to make money off that. The other side of that is that we can kind of trade with them from the other perspective to avoid our risk, to reduce our risk. So there's a lot of engagement on that side as well, just to reduce our risk in the market. And then resource adequacy, again, I think we've talked about that. We've got system RA, we've got local RA, obviously in the San Diego area, and then flexible RA, all different products that we need to buy. And that turns out to be a more of a larger part of our budget than we'd like to think. Wanted to piece together here a hypothetical kind of portfolio for us here over time. It's 2021 now. We might have resources online in 2022, and we've got a target to be 100% renewable by 2035. So again, this is a hypothetical. There's nothing market sensitive or no real contract data here, but just to talk about how we think about building this portfolio, right? We want to be 100% renewable by 2035 at this point, but part of it is really tempting to say, great, let's draw this line straight up and sign every deal we can right now and have them all online in 2025. Unfortunately, there's risk in that in a few different ways. One, not all those resources are necessarily available right now to be built in 2 years, but also one of the biggest aspects of risk management is just a diverse portfolio, right? So we talk about resource diversity, right? Some wind, some solar, some storage, some demand response, some load shifting programs. We want to do that. We also want to have locational, variability or diversity. So we want to have solar in California, Northern California, Southern California, San Diego County, wind in different places. So that as the sun moves or the wind blows differently, we not all of our risk is in any one bucket, right? It's the eggs in one basket theory. And then also there's this kind of temporal risk, right? If we buy everything right now and lock in 20-year contracts, 15-year, 20-year contracts at current prices, then we're stuck with those contracts for 15 years as technology changes. As we have better technology, new technology, there's potential to procure yourself out of the market, right? If we sign all of our load at 15-year contracts now, we wouldn't get to buy anything new for 15 years. So there's risk there in the price. There's also that you miss the opportunity to take advantage of new technologies as they present. So for us, it really is kind of a dollar cost averaging approach. Some of you guys might use that with your retirement portfolios or whatever, right? Buy a little bit every month, and your cost will average over time. It's kind of a similar thing here we're looking to do, to layer in contracts over time to build toward that 100%. Until we have kind of this established portfolio. And I'll note here that this is very hypothetical and probably oversimplified. We will probably work in a few more contracts earlier here in the process to get ourselves up and running. We do have total renewable need here, right? And if we don't meet that with long-term contracts, it's short-term renewable contracts. So there is benefit, right, to having some of these resources online sooner. So I wouldn't be surprised if we front load a little bit of this, but just want to kind of zoom out again to look at what we're looking at and how we're going to get from here to 2035. It's going to take a lot of work for the foreseeable future to buy all these contracts and get them online. Only 2 more slides, I think, and again I apologize and thank you guys for your patience, and hope some of you are still awake. But the other balance here as well, we talk about local, we talk about utility scale, we talk about customer programs and behind the meter, and then we talk about desert sided solar as well, and it really is looking at the chart above, it was kind of an all of the above approach, right? What are we going to use to shift this solar into the natural gas peak? And it really is an all of the above approach there. It's an all of the above approach here too, right? It's I think there's an affordability aspect of it, right? If we look at the average solar PPAs, so this is publicly available from level 10. They're showing kind of the average prices here of solar PPAs that have been signed over the last couple of years, and they're at $25 to $30. The most recent one for Southern California here, $27, right? And to compare that to, say, our feed-in tariff rate, which is we can use as a proxy for local generation, is $80 a megawatt hour. So it's another tough balance for us to draw. We want as much local generation, as much local development as possible, as to bring local resources to our area. On the flip side, I mentioned earlier, we only have so much money to spend, right? And so if we can buy 2 or 3 times as many megawatts of solar in the desert versus one on a rooftop or one on a local program, and climate change being a global issue, right? It's again a really tough balance to draw. So luckily, in some ways, we're in the position where we have so much to buy that it will be a yes, yes, and it will be a yes, local projects, yes, utility scale projects, and we'll be kind of taking an all of the above approach to meeting our portfolio needs. And the other thought too is I think we've got the feed-in tariff coming up. We've got the local RFI. I'll get to this in a minute. We're going to try to do as much locally as we can. I think we have a very strong emphasis. Right? I know that you all have been very supportive, and SDCP, in general, has been founded on encouraging local development as much as we can. I think that's our intent here. When we think about just the scale of what we need to do to get to 100% renewable between now and 2035. Like each one of these charts is, 100, 150 megawatts of solar, right? So So to be able to, and again, it's not all going to be solar. There will be wind and geothermal and other resources in that too. But as an example, right, or illustratively, say 150 megawatts of solar each year in order to meet these needs is a whole lot of solar, right? So it's unfortunately, if we could do it all local and at affordable prices, but if the resource were there local, we'd do it, we'd consider it. But I'm not sure there's 150 megawatts of available kind of DERs in the San Diego area to be online in the next couple of years, or over the next 5 years, let alone tomorrow or next year. So certainly we want to strike that balance, want to do as much as we can locally, but it's definitely going to take a kind of a blend of all of the above. And on that note, I'll just kind of end here with what we've done so far. And I know I ran through this way too quickly. You guys probably had a lot of questions, but you're also probably anxious to get to the next topic. So apologies for that. But again, happy to come back and make this a discussion and if we have time, take some questions now. But just to let you know, we have gone through this. We do have these 3 contracts here: Viking Solar, the JDR Energy Park that you guys mentioned already, and then the Oberon Solar. We also have 2 other long-term PPAs under negotiation currently. So we can't quite share those, but they should be hopefully coming out soon. And then we do have current and upcoming procurement as well. And I want to note this, the local RFI, I think you guys have heard about as well, that we've released, and really is an evergreen solicitation. So we had an initial kind of information or response date in September, but we're looking for any renewable energy and any energy storage in San Diego and Imperial counties. And this is anything bigger than a megawatt. So anything that can interconnect with the wholesale grid, we're very interested in. We want to, as much as anything, send a message to the market that, hey, we're here, we're serious about it, we're buying, and we want you to go start taking your land positions, start doing your research on interconnection studies, and really, let us know what you have, and let's make this, again, a conversation and a collaboration to bring as much renewable energy development to the area as possible. We also have the feed-in tariff PPA coming out. I think that will likely be, again, expected. Don't hold me to it, but expected in the November board meeting to have that fully released and out the door. We're also, on the other side of things, just working on this RA, the year ahead RA requirement that's due November 1st. So that's, we'll probably be a little hectic between now and November 1st, but that's that deadline. And then we'll probably have again, this is still a little flexible, but a renewable energy and energy storage, larger kind of RFO, to look outside the local area as well. We'll probably do that in Q1 of next year. But again, we're hoping to have this local RFI to get a good sense of the market of what's there. And to be able to use that to inform, again, that local, the larger RFO as well, to make make it local whenever we can. So with that, that was, I think, me speaking too quickly for half an hour. Again, apologies for that, but thanks for your time. And if we have questions, again, Chair and Sebastian, I'll defer to you all. But if we have time for a few questions, I'm happy to take them, and would be happy to come back and chat again.
Thank you, Byron. We appreciate that thorough update. Seriously. No, that was great. I see Gary's hand and then Matthew.
Okay, I feel like I have to be a surrogate for Tom Summers, who isn't, on the call in front of his 2 Tesla Powerwalls. I'm sure he would have been salivating at seeing that price, that spot price going to $150 or $200 a kilowatt hour. And I just heard recently about Tesla has I don't know what to call it, something called Connected Solutions. They're working with utilities in New England where Powerwall people can sell back into the market from their, energy they store in the Powerwall, using some kind of algorithm that looks, for, the best price advantage for them. I wonder if we're ever going to see something like that here.
It's a great question. I'll say I sure hope so. I think there's a lot of constraints. I think, as we know,
Sure.
I think I think it was the F-150. I think the electric F-150 just announced. I think that they've like intentionally designed it in order to be able to go V to G,
Yes.
right? Vehicle
Yeah,
back
you
to
could
grid.
you could keep your lights on if you
Yeah.
have an electric 150, right?
Exactly. So I think the market's moving that way. You know, and I've said this, you know, a number of different places. I think the wholesale side, you know, that we work in here is, I was gonna say it's easy. It's complex as you guys just saw, but it's you know, we kind of understand it. We work within it. I think again, another next frontier for us is really to get better at merging kind of the customer side, the customer programs, the customer participation with the wholesale market as well. And I know that's been a hot topic for years in the industry. I know that I think Sebastian and Nelson are working on the community power plan as well. So I think part of that I'll have to defer to them, but I think we'll be eager to see what comes of that. But I think, you know, designing programs that enable customers to flex their load to, again, whether it's, you know, their battery storage to sell it back to you know, be resources and be virtual power plants or whatever your term is. I think I think I can't speak for them kind of as the programs folks, but I'd like to think that we'll all be working pretty closely in that to do what we can to you know, allow people to sell back and you know, take advantage of those prices, but also to sell back and be, you know, kind of producers into this market. You know, that's one of the important slices. I think we looked at the chart of how much natural gas we have, you know, on the grid at hour 20, right, and 8 p.m.
Yes.
If customers can use their storage to sell back or to reduce their load, right, or to shift their demand around that, that's the easiest way to reduce fossil generation, right? It's just to reduce usage during fossil hours. So
well, the ability to sell back at a, you know, incredible price would create a situation instead of you know, scoping your solar capacity to your needs. You could over solarize with the benefit of selling back, and that would be an incredible boost for rooftop solar. And you know, we heard in a meeting or two ago about one of the programs besides feed-in tariff and net energy metering is RESBCT, and I forget what it stands for, but that aggregates you know, many rooftop solars with one I don't know, you know, microgrid type thing. I'm thinking, wouldn't it be good if you could match excess rooftop solar just going directly into storage, but what this would require would be having storage facilities that can just charge from the grid. I wonder if there's any possibility of seeing something like that in the future.
Can I jump in just very quickly? Yeah, Gary, that is the renewable energy self-generation bill credit transfer tariff.
You gotta sing the song, Sebastian.
Yeah, RESBCT. That program is for local agencies, and that one utilizes a generating facility. So if there's excess bill credits that are generated in one rooftop, then this program is available for local public agencies like schools. Then if they have another facility that doesn't have rooftop generation, they could use the excess bill credits to offset the bills in that facility. So it works a little bit differently. However, for these amazing ideas, I would just bring back up again that Nelson's going to be leading the development of the community power plant, which, you know, once we bring that vendor on board, there will be a sponge for all of these ideas and how it would make sense for us moving forward. So I would just mention that as well, and don't want to talk about the CPP too much because we have agendized that for later in the agenda.
All right, thanks for the questions, Gary. Thanks, Byron, Sebastian, Matthew.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation as always, Byron. Great job. I appreciated the note on long-term contracts, and I think, as we sit and reflect on our PCI exit fee and understanding that a lot of that was the result of bloated renewable energy contracts that our incumbent utility signed, I think I appreciate the cautious approach and understanding to that. And then I guess the one question I had is for the local RFI that's evergreen, is that also in response to kind of our dearth of local RA that we need to build out to meet state regs? Just curious.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Matthew. And I think, well, first of all, the PCIA and the above market costs, you certainly hit nail on the head. I was at PG&E, for a number of years for a while, and then Marin too, Marin Clean Energy, and saw kind of the contracts they signed were the best at the time, and you get, it's so easy to get deal happy, right? Oh my gosh, look at all these great deals. We want to sign them all now and be as renewable as possible right now. And then 3 years later, you're like, oh man, prices did what? Like, man, okay, maybe we should have taken our time. So yeah, one of those kind of, due diligence and kind of prudent approaches you learn over time. So as far as the local RFI, yeah, I think that's one of the main goals too, is, it's clear that the San Diego local area has been constrained for a long time. There may be some retiring resources as well coming up, but even without them, we need more resources in our area. So yeah, I think that's one of the benefits. We want to obviously encourage renewable generation, local development, local generation, but also just additional capacity in the area is going to be a benefit to everyone. So I think that's the goal. I can't share too much. We have seen we were pleased with the response I think that we got. From, it seemed like there are a number of developers, varying degrees or varying kind of progress along the development pathway, but certainly some people with some projects that clearly have had a lot of thought into them. Some with kind of more questions that, hey, okay, looks like San Diego's in business again. What are you looking for? Where can we buy? And some conversations along that too. So certainly seems like it had the effect that we were hoping for, is to let the market know that, yeah, we're here and we're looking to incentivize generation in the area. So kind of start that conversation, if nothing more.
All right, thanks for the question, Matthew. Thanks, Byron. I don't see any other hands raised within the committee or the public. Sebastian, were there any public comments on this item?
No public comments were submitted, Vice Chair.
Okay, well, seeing no more, we will move on to the next item. Thank you again, Byron.
Yeah, great. Thank you all. I've got to drop to get to a separate meeting, but really appreciate, again, the opportunity and look forward to speaking to you guys again.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, and let me find my screen again. And like I said, I will share Byron's presentation after our meeting today for your lovely weekend reading. Give me 1 second. Just pretend there's elevator music playing right now.
Ooh, Gary, you're muted. We can't hear you. Okay, great.
That was supposed to be perfectly visual, no sound.
Oh, I was looking for the audio.
Oh, there you go. Okay, for this item, my colleague Lucas Uto will be in charge.
Thanks, Sebastian. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Hammond, members of the CAC. Great to see you all again. Happy Friday. So this item is actually a continuation of the discussion that we had last month, during which I teed up a delinquency / collections policy draft, and the direction that I got from the CAC was to essentially create a framework for our collections / delinquency policy, based on the at least as a starting guide, based on SDG&E's policies that exist in the market. So today I'm actually going to walk you through what we've done in terms of being able to articulate a draft policy pertinent to our collections and delinquency handling of accounts going forward. And we are actually intending on taking this item to the FRMC, so the committee, I think it's on the 19th, and then subsequently to the board this month as well. So at a very high level, what are we hoping to achieve in being able to articulate and have the board approve a collection/delinquency policy? Broadly speaking, the objectives of this draft policy are twofold. One being to provide a framework for us as staff and our back office service provider, so the entity that's assisting us with all of our back office services, including billing, tracking of receivables, tracking of retail revenues, etc., is to provide a framework for us to better serve our customers and set clear expectations on the handling of past due customer charges slash arrearages. In other words, what should we do when we've billed customers and for one reason or the other, customer balances end up in our arrearage buckets. And then secondly, obviously, is to minimize and mitigate bad debts for the overall long-term financial viability, resiliency, and competitiveness of San Diego Community Power. Obviously, this is a big item in all of the load-serving entities in the state, especially as it pertains to the pandemic that we're hopefully navigating our way out of. So I'll move over to the next slide so I can give you a quick high-level overview of where arrearages stand in the state right now per each of the pertinent investor-owned utilities, including SDG&E. So the chart obviously tracks arrearages from the 20th, from January 2010 all the way through August of 2021. The reference here being, we're tracking arrearages as they were before the pandemic started. For our IOU, which is denoted in green, you can clearly see that the arrearages were under $400 million prior to the pandemic. Now you fast forward a few months later into the pandemic, and these arrearages have grown significantly over the last 15 months or so. A lot of our customers, collectively speaking, are suffering, as a function of being either, of loss of revenue, loss of income, and certainly, loss of life due to the pandemic, which has prevented them from making timely payments to their bills. And this is something that is well recognized across all levels, from local to state to federal. And there has been a few programs that are out there helping customers, but wanted to provide you an overall overview of where their arrearages balances actually stack up pre-pandemic all the way through this year. Next slide, please. So this chart right here, this tracks the arrearages from pre-pandemic through August again, but specifically for those customers that are on CARE and FARA programs. So the CARE program is the California Alternate Rates for Energy program, and the FARA program is the Family Electric Rate Assistance program. And collectively, these two programs are geared to towards the low-income customers. And even in that subset, you can clearly see that their arrearages have almost doubled from the pre-pandemic period through August of this year. Now, why is this important? It's important because a lot of folks in low income are actually the ones that typically tend to be at the highest risk of disconnections. Now, the state, the governor and the state legislature recognized that risk, and so they did pass a ruling last year where there was a moratorium, essentially preventing IOUs from disconnecting customers as a result of having arrearage balances on their accounts. That moratorium just expired last week. It expired as of September 30th. And that's not to say that the IOUs can immediately start, the discontinuance of service cycle. That's to say that they can start pursuing levels of some sort of disconnections. But again, I mean, there are a few programs that are there to help alleviate some of these arrearage balances. And on the next slide, I'm actually going to cover a few of these programs that are currently out there that can be utilized to assist customers, and they can be used to assist customers, both bundled and customers that are on our service. So the first program is actually the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, called LEHIPE in short. And this program is federally funded and administered by the California Department of Community Service and Development, and it offers up to $1,000 in financial aid for SDG&E customer bills. The second program is called the Arrearage Management Payment Program, short AMP. This program actually is geared towards residential customers who also must be participating in CARE or FARA programs. And this program assists customers who make timely payments on their current charges, and they experience a debt forgiveness process, wherein if I make a payment of my current charge today, my prior accrued account balance gets forgiven 1/12 throughout the year. Again, I think from my perspective, I do think this is one of, if not one of the most generous programs out there that customers can utilize to alleviate some of their accrued arrearages as a function of the pandemic. And the program actually offsets up to $8,000 worth of arrearage balances on an account. Third program is the California Arrearage Payment Program, for short, CAP. This program is administered by the Department of Community Services at the state, and it's actually it's monies that were released to the state load serving entities, including IOUs and public utilities. 694.5 million of which is geared towards investor-owned utilities such as SDG&E and the CCAs that exist in the state. For this program, customers don't necessarily have to do any application. The monies will be released or dispersed to the IOUs, and the IOUs will then turn around and apply the funds to customers' arrearage balances accordingly. So for us, we didn't have a whole lot of exposure in terms of our residential customers, simply because those will not transition over to our service until next year, starting in February. However, SDG&E should be getting a portion of their allotted funds, and they should be utilizing to reduce the arrearages that you saw in the previous slides before these accounts switch over to us starting next year going forward. Next slide, please. Last but not least, the CPUC has actually mandated automatic extended payment plans, and this is true across all customers in the IOUs within the state, wherein customers are not to be disconnected for not paying their bills or their arrearage balances without these conditions being met. One of which being customers have to be put on 24-month payment plans if they're residential, and then for small commercial, it has to be at least 24 plus months so that they can essentially amortize their arrearage balance over the course of the payment plan, and not be subjected to having to pay the account balance in full at any point before disconnection. Last but not least, the CAP funds, which I spoke about earlier, where the state is essentially giving money to the IOUs to help offset some of the customers' balances. That we are expecting to be completed no later than January of 2022. And in so doing, customers, especially residential customers, will see relief on their bills before they transition over to our service. Now, why is that important? I'll cover that in the next slides. Sebastian, do you mind moving over to the next slide, please? Great. So then that takes us to our collections delinquency policy draft. Why is it important for us to have a policy in place going forward? Again, you know, with an aim to mitigate and minimize the risk of bad debts going forward. We believe that for any active customer of ours, when they move over to our service, whether that is you know, commercial industrial customer or residential customers, we will consider an account to be delinquent if they have an account balance that is exceeding $250, as denoted on their bill, and you know, and this balance has to be at least 60 days past due, or 90 days plus 90 days past due going forward. What we are looking to do is to send those customers a letter as part of our delinquency handling policy, letting them know that, hey, you are delinquent on the letter, and that there are all these programs that you can actually take advantage of before we return, or rather we take the account back to SDG&E. And the reason why that is needed is obviously to reduce our bad debt exposure going forward, as well as take the account back to SDG&E, assuming this customer does not make any arrangements to either get on a payment plan or pay the balance in full. And the reason why it's important for us to take the account back to bundle service is because CCAs generally do not have the power to discontinue service, and SDG&E and the other IOUs do. And so typically in the CCA space, the CCAs would return their account back to bundle service if it meets the thresholds of, you know, of constituting the balance to be delinquent, so that the IOU can pursue the delinquency handling protocols. But again, we fully understand that there are a lot of customers who are hurting economically, especially in our communities of concern. And so we will not, again, this is the part that I definitely would like to stress as part of our delinquency handling policy. We will not consider any customer, regardless of whether or not they have a $250 balance on their account, to be delinquent if they get on some sort of a payment plan. If you're on a payment plan, automatically to us, that would signal the willingness for this customer to make some sort of a plan to make their payments, right? Yes, we're probably not gonna see the full offset of their arrearage right away, but we will recognize that this customer is making efforts to get on a payment plan so that they can hopefully help offset the account balance going forward. And so for all customers, regardless of the account balance, any customer on any sort of a payment plan, we will not be considering that customer to be delinquent in our view. And again, I think the importance of this is we know and we're cognizant of the fact that there are a lot of payment assistance programs that exist in our region to help our customers meet their bill obligations. And for that reason, we will definitely be working with them in actually alerting them of the programs that exist, similar to what I've actually shared with you all, so that they can get on those programs and get the requisite assistance to help them meet their bill obligations accordingly. Now, what happens for those customers that are no longer in our service? Either a customer moved out or a customer, for whatever reason, closed their premise, etc. For any customer who is no longer active on our service, we're actually going to adopt a few things to help alleviate the risk of delinquency. One of which will be for any account that has closed and that has a balance of $20 or less, we're going to automatically assume that balance to be a write-off. We're not going to pursue it in any way, shape, or form. And then for any balance that is $20 or more, wherein SDG&E is no longer attempting to collect on our behalf, simply because the billing process goes through SDG&E, customers get one bill from SDG&E, and SDG&E is the entity that essentially attempts to collect on both their behalf and ours. When SDG&E no longer is collecting that balance, and that typically happens 145 days after the account closes, they will return that uncollected receivable back to us. And when that happens, if that balance is more than 20, we will actually look to issue an RFP for a collections agency locally. But again, that collections agency will be working very closely with members of our staff to make sure that we're not inconveniencing customers. Obviously, I mean, the collections business for the most part sometimes is cutthroat, but we are wanting to partner up with the collections agency that's going to have a humanistic element or approach to collections process. And that is important to us because, and this is again, from a personal experience, the collection cycle typically affects people from communities of concern, most of which do look like me. So when we were working on this draft policy, I have to admit that it is a little bit personal for me, and that we definitely would like to be very understanding with customers' specific situations. And for that, yes, there will be a collections agency that will assist in trying to recoup some of the uncollectible accounts receivables, but we will do so in a very humanistic approach is what the conclusion will be. And then last but not least, we're not going to levy any late payment interest on past due balance. And from our perspective, relative to the collections process by the incumbent IOU, we do believe that our policy is going to be more customer centric because we're giving customers almost 2 months before we recognize their account to be delinquent. Whereas with SDG&E for a residential customer, the past due balance is technically considered to be delinquent after 19 days. And so that is the very basic high level overview of the collections/delinquency policy draft that the staff has been able to come up with based on the direction that we got from the CAC last month. I'll take a pause here and see if there are any questions, comments, or additional feedback on this.
Thank you, Lucas. That was a thorough update, and it's nice to see that SDCP is being compassionate and really keeping customers in mind here. I see Ed Lopez has his hand raised. Go ahead, Ed.
Thank you very much. Let me just make sure I am unmuted. Lucas, thank you so much for the presentation. I want to echo what Tara just mentioned. I am pleased to hear Community Power's threshold approach and the goals that it seeks and the way it tries, or it's setting forth its policy to treat and handle and frame considerations for the customers. Not only in the state of California, not only in SDG&E territory, but this is a huge problem nationally. There's a heck of a lot of commentary out there in terms of the magnitude of the problem that the entire country will be facing. So I'm glad San Diego Community Power again is overall sensitive to it and trying to work its way through reasonably. I think the balancing consideration, or the other hand consideration, if you will, is we also recognize too that this potentially impacts the bottom line for San Diego Community Power in terms of revenue forecast. Let me just ask you, Lucas. So my understanding then, and I'm trying to summarize briefly, is that essentially the policy in terms of providing notice on delinquent accounts will take into account or recognize if customers, as they've switched on over from SDG&E, were already enrolled in some sort of management plan or program before they transferred over. Juan, is that correct?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. Right now, we do get a weekly report or a snapshot of our customer base from SDG&E. And in that weekly report, obviously, I mean, we're not currently serving residential customers. And so we are in the process of working collaboratively with SDG&E to ensure that they will provide those indicators to us once we start enrollment of the residential subset in February of 2022 going forward, so that we can have visibility into which residential customers are on payment plans and what sort of payment plans those are, as well as track the, for the program, the arrearage management program, we would actually have to also know of their arrearage balance that SDG&E is carrying on the books, so that we can also assist in tracking that 1/12 of forgiveness that is to be administered as part of our program going forward.
Very good, thank you. I think you sensed where I was heading. You know, just as an aside, my day job is with UCAN. So we have actually had senior staff participating in a number of these AMP proceedings at the commission. Is it your understanding, do I have it correct, though, that essentially, and particularly the AMP programs or the payment plans that you identified, they're being piloted, if you will, and I believe there'll be caps on participation, and I'm chiefly focused on the residential side. Do you know if that's the case, if there are limitations on as pilots of these programs on the number of ratepayer or customer who can participate?
That's an excellent question, actually. I think what you're referring to is the percentage of income payment plan called PIP. And yes, you're absolutely right. For percentage of income payment plan / PIP, that is a pilot program, and it's going to be for 48 months. It's essentially, this program is different from AMP. In the sense that AMP, customers get a forgiveness scheme, if you will, wherein if they make their timely current charge payment, then 1/12 of their arrearage balance accrued gets forgiven. With PIP, which is the percentage of income payment plan, which actually the CPUC just approved yesterday, and that's the reason why I didn't capture it in my presentation. My apologies for that. Is essentially going to look at the customer's income, right? And then they're going to essentially amortize the arrearage balance to match the income, so that this customer isn't necessarily seeing fluctuations in their bill. And this is inherently important for those customers of ours who are on a fixed payment, who are on fixed income, rather, especially our elderly citizens and folks who are, folks who typically get a fixed income every month. And for that one, you're absolutely right that it's a pilot. And for SDG&E in particular, there is a target as opposed to a cap, simply because we did actually participate in comments to the CPUC saying it cannot be a target when we don't know, what portion of the residential customer base is going to switch over to our service from bundle service. And so it's going to be a target of 1,000 customers in the SDG&E region. And then I think the other IOUs have, they have higher targets because obviously that, they're relatively bigger. So I think PG&E, if I remember correctly, has 12,000 target, and SCE the remaining ones. But cumulatively speaking, if I remember correctly, it's a target to have the pilot for close to 15,000 customers in total in the state.
Excellent. Thank you. I think it's thank you for helping me understand and clarify that again. I've seen some of our senior staff is participating, but my understanding was essentially, at least for this PIP program, the ability to participate or the space available would actually be eaten up relatively quick if in fact the magnitude of this problem is as everybody understands. Lastly then, and again, thanks so much for the presentation, Lucas. If there's an opportunity, then when the opportunity provides to notify account holders of their debt, will information be included as to the availability and how to access participation in the various programs?
Absolutely, absolutely. We believe, we staunchly believe in that, information sharing with our customer base is the #1 driver to helping customers realize that they're not in this alone, right? There are programs out there, and we know of these programs because we are part of the decision making process of the CPUC, advocating for our customers. And so yes, in the notifications that we will send when customers have delinquency balances with us, we will clearly articulate the programs that they can essentially pursue to be able to receive the assistance that they need in being able to offset some of the arrearages accrued as a function of the pandemic going forward.
Thank you again for a very nice presentation. I feel really good that San Diego Community Power is starting off in a really fine fashion. Thanks.
My
Thanks.
pleasure.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Lucas. Any other questions? Tom, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Lucas, and wonderful presentation, loaded with information. I hope I can absorb some of it. And also kudos to both you and Byron for your the talent that you bring to our operation. I regard our situation as pretty delicate, considering that debt is mushrooming during this period of our startup across the nation, and I'm just wondering if there's any other business model that is delivering there's a party delivering a product and collecting for that product because we don't have much to say about that or much control of that, and it just seems like we're in a very precarious situation with that in spite of all the wonderful programs. And I've wondered if you and your staff there have given any consideration to turning indebtedness into an advantage to us. In other words, if there are people who can't pay for whatever reason, but may have a rooftop available or some other possible resource available that we could turn indebtedness into a profit center. And if you guys have explored any possibilities in that realm.
Hi, Tom. Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Quite honestly, we have not, but that's not to say that we shouldn't look into those opportunities. I do think part of the challenge there would be, in order for us to, let's say, leverage a customer's rooftop, right, for either putting some sort of solar, etc., that customer would actually have to be the owner of the property, and unfortunately, the bulk of the customers aren't necessarily owners; they're renters, and so that creates challenging scenarios in which we can pursue something along the lines of what you've articulated. I do think the other challenge too is the bulk of of our customers in communities of concern is again the fact that they sometimes, for the most part, do not necessarily own their properties outright, and to where then it becomes almost impossible for us to pursue some sort of a trade-off in terms of, hey, you do have a past due balance here. We can maybe put some sort of solar infrastructure and help, generate some volumes for us, sell those volumes, and help offset their arrearages. But definitely something for us to take back. But definitely wanted to recognize the challenges that exist in being able to go down that path.
Yeah, thank you.
I
My
do like
pleasure.
that idea, Tom, for the accounts where that could happen.
Yeah. And then last but not least, Vice Chair Hammond, I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that, I knew that Chair Price was not going to make this meeting. And so he and I actually met to discuss this draft policy. And he had a lot of questions, obviously centered around communities of concern and fully being cognizant of the fact that the delinquency cycle, for the most part, affects people who look like him and I. And we chatted it through, and I think ultimately we were both comfortable with adopting a draft, creating a draft policy that obviously reconciled, the long-term viability of San Diego Community Power as an organization, and at the same time being very cognizant of the folks that this policy could impact going forward.
Thank you for sharing that. When I heard Chair Price wasn't making it, I was hoping he would provide feedback on this item. So glad to hear that. I did have one quick question. So slide 10 in the deck, it says an active customer that exceeds $250. That's what triggers the late payment. So if people are late, but under 250, item 2 doesn't go into effect. They only get the letter after.
You're absolutely correct.
What about for commercial? Like say that's 1 month's bill. Do they immediately then start getting letters, or is this specific to residential?
So we have not actually made a distinction between residential and commercial as far as the dollar threshold, and the importance of doing it this way, we believe, is to give customers a proactive heads up that, hey, you have reached our delinquency threshold, as opposed to waiting until that bill is an insurmountable challenge, to where then, customer says, oh my goodness, now, you're telling me that I'm delinquent when I'm, at $1,000 threshold. It's I think based on what we know, it's easier for customers to offset a smaller balance, right? It doesn't seem so daunting. Whereas when you do wait until the balance is too big, then by that time it's usually too late for a customer to even contemplate getting on a payment plan and being able to offset their arrearage accordingly.
That makes sense. I know as the IOUs have a level payment plan. It's not specific to collections or delinquency, but it, for those who don't know, they average your bill. So every single month you're paying the same. So in summertime, when people are running AC, instead of having a surprise $800 bill, they're paying $200 the whole year, for instance. Is that something that San Diego Community Power is offering?
Yeah, so I think all of the payment plan arrangements, including level pay plan, those have to go through the IOU, because as you know, the IOU is the entity that renders that bill to the customer, which incorporates our charges. And then they also do the collection aspect on both their behalf and ours. And yes, so in the grand scheme of our policy, of our delinquency handling policy, any customer who, let's say, has an account balance that's over $250, and they are late for whatever reason, in that 60 or 90-day bucket, so long as they're on any sort of a payment plan, including level pay, we will not consider that customer to be delinquent from our perspective.
But any SDCP customer who wanted to go on the level payment plan it just is set up through SDG&E.
Correct, absolutely.
Okay, I did have one last question. If someone is in step 4 on here and they are unable to go back to SDG&E, is there a reason why they couldn't go back to SDG&E if they didn't do SDG&E's payment plans? And is there a point where they might cut off a customer, in which case San Diego Community Power can't transfer them?
No, so in other words, I think your question is what happens if SDG&E, for whatever reason, shuts off the power or deactivates the meter?
No, it says when someone's returned to SDG&E, can SDG&E say, no, we don't want this customer back because they had such a history of not paying us?
No, so that would actually violate the code of conduct. They cannot say no. In other words,
Okay, great.
because yeah, we
Thank you.
can always return customers to bundle service for a myriad of reasons. We could, including delinquency.
Okay. Thank you. That answers my questions. I don't see any hand raised. Sebastian, were there any public comments on this item from the public?
No public comments were submitted, but let me do a double check.
Okay, and thank you, Lucas. This is very helpful. Appreciate all your time on this.
Confirming that no public comments were submitted and just giving folks an opportunity to raise their hand. And I don't see any.
And Lucas, you're not looking for a vote from us on this, are you? It was more of an informational item?
Correct.
Okay. Well, great. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.
All right. Sebastian, you taking this one?
I'll introduce my colleague, but we presented to you our program priorities for this fiscal year. One of them was bringing to you all the scope of work for the community power plan. So here it is. And to handle this item is my colleague, Nelson Lamelli. Nelson, please go ahead and take it away.
Yes, thank you. Sebastian, am I able to share my screen so I can pull up the PowerPoint?
Yeah, let me stop sharing.
Sounds good. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for sticking around with us. I'm sure this is something that you are all very excited to see and provide some feedback. So let me quickly pull up the presentation and just go ahead and move on to the next slide and talk about the community power plan scope of work. So I think we had talked about this previously about how we want to do the equivalent of what Clean Power Alliance and East Bay Community Energy did with their local development business plan. So we stole a lot of elements from their respective plans and came up with this scope of work for what we are terming the community power plan. So I want to start off with one of what we're aiming to do here with this plan, what the goals and the objectives are. So I want to start with the foundational document of our organization, the JPA. And one of the stated goals within the JPA is that SDCP is established to provide a range of energy products and program options available to all parties and customers that best serve their needs, their local communities, and support regional sustainability efforts. And I think we all know that member agencies elected to join us, expecting us to develop and offer innovative programs as both a means of investing back into our local communities and also what we term enhancing environmental performance, which is meeting their climate action goals and other regional sustainability goals. So what we're terming the community power plan, the way we look at this is to refine that really broad expectation and into like an overall community investment strategy and provide a series of discrete programs, ideas that we could then undertake. And so through the CPP, the Community Power Plan, we want to be able to develop local programs, and these are copied directly from the JPA that address climate change by reducing energy-related greenhouse gas emissions, prioritize the use and development of local, cost-effective, renewable, and distributed energy resources in a way that encourage and support local development and storage. They produce economic benefits to our region, including local workforce development. And to the extent authorized by law, support a stable, skilled, and trained workforce. and pursue purposeful and focused investment in communities of concerns and programs centered on economic, environmental, and social equity. So these were specifically called out in the JPA, and so we wanted to make sure that these were included in our overall objectives and goals of the Community Power Plan. With that in mind, the Community Power Plan is expected to lay out the next 5 years, the vision for the next 5 years that we can then utilize when we implement programs and we develop locally renewable energy. So to accomplish that, really what the RFP will do is 2 things. The first is a community needs assessment. So I think as we saw earlier in the JPA, it specifically calls out to meet the needs of our community. And so we want to be able to find out what those needs are. And in order to do that, I think we need to start with conducting a community needs assessment. And so we want to conduct a programmatic community needs assessment. And through this needs assessment, we want to be able to determine, as the name implies, the community needs within each of our member communities as they relate to energy resilience, energy affordability, and energy efficiency. And when we say energy efficiency, we of course mean electric energy, which is the main what we provide. We want to be able to determine what the community needs are as they relate to distributed energy resources and as they relate to greenhouse gas reduction through electrification. So that's the first step in terms of the community needs. What we also want to determine, and I think it's important to keep in mind, is that there are a number of existing program offerings available to customers. And so we want to know what those existing program offerings are, but not just know, but we want to know what are some of the challenges our customers are facing in order to participate in those programs. And I say this because we might be able to step in and assist customers to take advantage of those programs. So instead of duplicating efforts, maybe we can streamline them or help customers participate in this program. So we want to know what that is. And then alongside of that, we want to know what the gaps are in existing program offerings, because again, we may be able to step in and fill that gap, or at least bridge that gap between maybe 2 program offerings. So we want to be able to know what those gaps are. And then I think more broadly, we want to know methods and strategies that we could employ to address the above. So what methods can we use to bridge those gaps? Maybe what methods can we use to address those challenges? That's what we're aiming to do with this community needs assessment. So once we do that, once we have that community needs assessment, then we can really start to work on the actual plan itself. And so the second piece of this RFP would be looking to develop a multifaceted plan that will pull together all of the potential program offerings, all of these ideas that are out there, and into like a coherent framework that would allow us to analyze and calculate costs, benefits, measurements of cost effectiveness and success. So this would be a framework for us to follow and for us to use as we start to implement these programs. And so in order to do that, we wanted to lay out that we have a number of tools that we can leverage programmatically. And this is by no means an extensive list. I would say this is just the tip of the iceberg. But broadly speaking, we have at our disposal the ability to set rates. So we have rate making ability. We have procurement authority, meaning that we have the authority, our board has the authority to go out and enter into contracts for procurement of energy. We have programmatic authority as well, meaning that we can implement programs without needing to go through the cumbersome CPUC process. We can invest our net revenues in any way that we deem is appropriate and that the community deems appropriate. And that we have the ability to administer and seek and partner with organizations to secure grants, both from the local, state, and federal level, as well as from private or even nonprofit organizations. And then lastly is that we also have the ability to administer third-party programs. So specifically here is that we can go after CPUC funding if needed. So we wanted to show potential responders that we have a number of tools at our disposal, and please let us know what tools we can use and what ways in your responses as you start thinking about how do we get this community power plan developed. So with that, I think we can start to kind of think about like what are some of the programmatic priority areas that we have at least identified in the RFP. And this is where I'm really open to hearing from you all in terms of your feedback on this. And maybe we're missing something, or maybe we need to clarify something. So in terms of the programmatic priority areas, we have identified programs that reduce greenhouse gas emissions and fossil fuel use in transportation and buildings. And we can do this via electrification that is powered by our energy mix. Second, we want to do programs that address populations and market segments that are currently underserved by other energy programs, particularly renters and multifamily buildings, as well as mobile homes. Third, we want to do programs that support our member agencies in implementation of their climate action plans and leverage our member agencies as implementation partners. And that can address specific local needs, including being prepared for natural disasters and making sure that our critical facilities are resilient against any kind of natural disaster. 4, we want to have programs that promote distributed energy resources. And 5, we want to have programs that help us and the San Diego region as a whole cost effectively manage the resilience on intermittent resources for electricity supply. So what do I mean by that is during times when maybe the wind isn't blowing as strong, or there's a storm or something, you know, as we rely on more renewable energy, these become more intermittent resources. We want to be able to have programs that we can cost effectively manage that resiliency on them, on those intermittent resources. And 6, we want to have programs that have a positive impact on local air quality and therefore improve public health within the region. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about the development process, but Vice Chair, I will look to you whether you want me to continue with the presentation or want me to stop at the last slide and take some comments.
Does anyone have any questions now before we move on? Not seeing any, so let's keep going. Thank you, Nelson.
Sounds good. So in terms of the development process, we expect this to take about a 9-month process once we select a consultant. And that is inclusive of doing the community needs assessment, which we think is going to be the bulk of the time. The selected consultant or consultants, it could be a team of them, will be required to work with our board, to work with you all, to work with all of staff, and to work with our member agencies to conduct that needs assessment and develop that plan. And most importantly, I think, is that the consultant will be required to work with local and regional community-based organizations. We want to be able to talk with the community-based organizations about what the community needs and how best to address that. And one of the important things that we know in the RFP is that not only will they be required to work with these organizations, with the COBs or CBOs, excuse me, we want to be able to compensate them as well for that. We don't want to be able to add additional work to the organizations without adequately compensating them for that important information that they are doing on our behalf. So in terms of next steps, we will take all the feedback that we receive from you, finalize the requests for proposals, and then work through Calpine, since they are going to be the funder of this plan as it is stipulated as per their contract. And we'll issue an RFP this month. That RFP will be open for a number of weeks. And we will start, once we close out RFP, we will then review, do interviews, etc., and then come back to you all and the board in January with an update on where we stand with selecting a consultant. We are trying to be aggressive with this and do a tentative work commencement date of February of 2022. So we don't want to delay this any further. But we also recognize that we're facing up against a couple of major holidays. So we want to be able to realistically do this and make sure that we're doing our due diligence. So with that, I will take any questions. And if you need me to go back to the previous slide in terms of programmatic areas, please let me know.
Thank you. Sounds like you guys have a good plan in place. Any questions for Nelson? All right, David, go ahead.
Okay. So I overall, I like the plan, Nelson, and I think it really is a timely thing. And so we really want to see this plan developed. I'm wondering if there's already a lot of information on the needs assessment in our community, and if it would be of any value to try to access that information from other agencies. For example, SANDAG, the City of San Diego, the County of San Diego, they've all been collecting information for their climate action plans or regional transportation plan. They've done special outreach into communities of concern. And I know it's on a broader scale than just energy needs, but I'm just wondering if we have to start at the beginning with the community power plan, or if we can access some of that information and community input from other agencies.
Can I mention something, Nelson, on that? So great question, David. I think obviously a lot of people here have been doing some amazing work, including, I would say all of you who are on this advisory committee. So we definitely want to start with gathering that existing information and building on top of it and adding our own sugar and spice, if you will, of STCP. And that's the same approach that we're taking with the local government commission work that we talked about last month. Obviously, we are doing stakeholder interviews. We've spoken with you all and gathered that input. We acknowledge that the Climate Collaborative has gathered a lot of that same information from existing member agencies. So we've spoken with Darby over there and Gabby at the Climate Collaborative to get that information so we don't repeat efforts. And we already are saving time and we can move forward. So I don't want to speak for Nelson, but I think we'll pursue that same approach in just seeing the lay of the land, what's been done, what hasn't, gathering that information, doing our homework, and then going out there.
Yes, that's an excellent point. Thank you, Sebastian. I was going to mention that very same thing in the sense of like, we want the consultant to know that we want to do a community needs assessment, but this information, a lot of this information already exists. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to pull that all together in a way that can then feed directly into the community power plan, so that we have a coherent framework, as was said earlier. But yes, thank you, Sebastian. But very much was along. It's like we work together or something.
Thank you.
Thanks, David and Nelson. Any other questions? Despite the lack of feedback, I know this is something that our committee has been excited about, and many advocates that have been pushing for community choice energy in San Diego, some for over a decade, wanted to see local projects. So it's exciting to be talking about this. We appreciate it.
I think what that just shows to me is that we are listening to you all and bringing everything together into the community power plan. So I'm glad that we got that right.
Great. Sebastian, are there any public comments on this one? Oh, I do see an attendee hand raised.
Okay.
If we can hold on that one, and we'll all go to Fabi. able to-
Yes, give me 1 second while I pull up the timer.
I can time as well if you'd like.
That's okay, I got it. All right, Bobby.
Good afternoon, everyone. Fabi Lau, Senior Equity Policy Manager with the Center for Sustainable Energy. Really appreciate the presentation and the specific call out to include a community needs assessment as part of that community power plan. I think that it is, in order to truly operationalize equity and to really highlight the community identified needs and solutions from that various communities in each of the member agencies and jurisdictions on SCCP, this community needs assessment, it's going to need to include the very specific needs and solutions. There's so many communities across the region with so many different specific needs. So this community needs assessment has to be very tailored. And, I do appreciate what Sebastian and you, Nelson, said about gathering what's existing information, but that's just that first step. You need to go really further down to have those very meaningful and ongoing conversations with community-based organizations and communities of concern to make sure that those documents, probably did not capture everything that they need to have addressed, or they did not really incorporate thoroughly, if at all, their concerns. So I really appreciate that SCCP is having this really intentional approach to require the consultant to, work with CBOs. That's something that us at Center for Sustainable Energy, we really truly believe in. We incorporate that model into administering one of our programs, the Clean Vehicle Rebate Project. We have a community partners network, and we use that model where we work with CBOs across the state and we compensate them for the expertise. So just wanted to say thank you and kudos, and really looking forward to this plan being developed.
Hand raised, so Sebastian, you're able to bring her forward as well, please.
All right, Ms. Morgan. All right. Let's see here. You have been unmuted.
There we go. Yay. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question on this topic. And I also applaud the initiative being taken here and join the previous commenter in being thankful to you all for including the needs assessment. I agree that it's essential, and to tailor it in the way that she was suggesting is very important as well. I have two questions. One is whether the needs assessment will encompass the entire expanded geography of the county, now that we know they are coming. And secondly, will applying to on the RFP to conduct the needs assessment affect in any way the ability of the applicant to bid on future community power projects that might result? Does a conflict get created that way? Thank you for any answers to those questions.
Thanks, Erica. Nelson, are you able to answer that?
Yes, so in terms of the first question, I already forgot it, so I do apologize. But in terms of the second question of the conflict, we will need to check with our legal counsel around that to make sure that there isn't any sort of conflict on that. And Sebastian, I see you unmuted, so.
Yeah, thank you, Nelson. Great question, Erica. Absolutely, it will cover our expanded geographical footprint. So we definitely want to engage our unincorporated allies in San Diego County.
Thank you, Sebastian, for saving me. And yes, that is specifically listed in the RFQ is the entire county, and we kind of lay out the background of that.
And then, if I may also add, Nelson, if the RFP goes out before any future jurisdictions join, we'll work once that consultant comes on board to incorporate any future member jurisdictions that come on board beyond the County of San Diego.
All right, thank you, Erica. Thank you, Fabi. Sebastian, now do you mind checking if there was anything from the public that was submitted ahead of time?
There were no submitted public comments for this item, Vice Chair.
Okay, All right, well, it looks like there's no one else looking to make a comment or ask a question. Thank you so much, Nelson. That was very helpful, and we're excited to see some local projects roll out in the near future.
Thank you so much.
All right.
All righty. Perfect. Nelson, do you mind unsharing so I can reshare? Okay, here we go. Thank you, Nelson. Also, just want to give a thanks to Matt for the community power plan name. I think that was you who came up with it, but whoever did, thank you. It made it easier for us. Okay. All righty. So this item is discuss and provide recommendation to the board on the fiscal year 21-22 CAC work plan. I'll kick us off with the process, and then I'll share who was on part of that process and the back and forth that we did on how to come up here, and then for the ad hoc committee members, if you do want to make some comments, please do. So we have to adopt an annual work plan as part of our scope of work, and that work plan has been going on. The update of that work plan has been going on for a little bit longer than I had anticipated before. At first, we had set it up to be a calendar year process, so January to February. But then after some reflection and alignment, we decided that this would be a fiscal year work plan. So this will be into effect until July of next year, July 1st of next year. Earlier this year, if you all recall, we created an ad hoc committee of the CAC to focus on the work plan. Ad hoc committee can't have a quorum, so it was comprised of 4 of you. And we met throughout the past few months to discuss what to include on there and what additions to add as well. So we held a series of meetings. This ad hoc group comprised of Tara, Vice Chair Hammond, Carolyn Schofield, Gary Johns, and Chair Price, who is not here today. We came to a pretty good consensus, I would say. And then there was lately a request to add a section on procurement projects, which we've added to the work plan here today. So hopefully all of you have had a chance to take a look at this, but essentially it includes the procurement effort section, which would allow you all to be briefed on procurement projects and give comments on projects coming forward. So we set the stage today with the fundamentals of the energy procurement presentation. We recognized, as Byron said, that that's a start. And if there are more questions, we're happy to bring him and any other members of his team forward. But we've included this section here. We've also added some other aspects to the work plan as well on marketing and communications efforts as it relates to phase 3 that we have here. Rita will be an integral part of that, and who you met today and unfortunately had to go to another meeting. We wanted to kick off first off with ensuring that equity is at the top of all review, all input that's provided by the Community Advisory Committee. So we wanted to kick off with that. Educational presentations, legislative, public policy, and regulatory. We've done that already with the NEM proceeding, so that will only keep going forward. We have our inclusive and sustainable workforce policy, which will be updated. It is a living document, and when it eventually comes back to you all, we do plan to include the name equitable, inclusive, and sustainable The next section is the community power plan. So we're already working on this one pretty quickly. We have staff and board initiated items that we may not have included here, but may become an item later on. We have the community member communications guide. So I'm looking at you, Gary. Now that we have Rita on board, we have some more human power to move this forward and set up a pathway for our phase 3 enrollment, which will be a behemoth, to say the least. We also have the Legislative 101 session that all of you, or some of you have called for, which is to better understand how a bill goes through Sacramento. And so Laura will be coming to you all in the next few meetings to give that overview. We've already tackled the procurements outlook for fiscal year 21-22. We've been working on the local government commission work, which just started. And then once we develop the design, we'll come back to you all for more of the nitty-gritty details, as well as our disadvantaged communities green tariff and community solar green tariff programs, which I've mentioned to you all in some degree or another. But again, this will only grow into a bigger snowball as we get further into the fiscal year. Then at the end, it says the CAC shall cover all of the tasks that mentioned above, with prior approval of staff. It's really just to make sure that we're prepped ahead of time so we can agendize it properly, but within the purview of the scope of work that's been approved by the board. And then, yeah, all tasks should be presented and acted upon in a manner that complies with the Brown Act. Moving forward, and then I'll stop talking and I'll let our ad hoc group speak. We will be setting another ad hoc group in January of each year. Again, we're brand new at this, so we're learning the process. This ad hoc group will take several months to meet. We're all very busy. We all have full-time jobs to meet, to discuss, okay, next fiscal year, what can we do? What's going on? We have the county joining, etc. And then by July, August, around this time of this year, we would be approving the next fiscal year work plan for, it would be 22-23, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll pause right there. I want to give a big shout out to our ad hoc committee. You guys were committed, working hard. It was really a back and forth process. And so big thank you to you all for the extra meetings. And yeah, I'll pause right there.
Thanks, Sebastian. And I think you did a good job relaying the history and how this is our final document. If you guys don't recall, since it's been about 1.5 years, our initial document that we had been given was very bare bones, and we accepted it without many questions or ideas. And so we took the time to make this much more thorough and to reflect the work we are doing and want to be doing. So does anyone have any questions about this or absolutely needed edits for it? I'm not sure if Sebastian's open to making more edits at this point, but that was the plan. Ad hoc would come forward with what we're recommending to all of you, but of course your voices are important too. So if anyone has feedback, feel free to chime in. No feedback? I see Fabi's hand is still raised, but I think it's raised from before. Okay, there it went down. Okay, no feedback, no questions. Sebastian, were there any written comments from the public on this?
No written public comments today. Okay.
Oh, well, that makes it easier. On item 9, I'll note that. Okay. Well, thank you all again for helping make this happen.
Excuse me, Vice Chair. I do need a vote since this needs to be approved by the board. So if you want to call a roll call vote, so this can be recommended to the board.
Do we need a motion first?
I
Yes.
move that we adopt the work plan as presented.
Thank
I
you, Gary.
second. I second.
Thank you. All right, roll call.
Alrighty. Let's see here. David Harris.
Enthusiastically support, yes.
Thank you, David. Jen Dirks.
Support.
Gary Johns.
Yes, in support.
Carolyn Schofield.
Yes.
Tom Summers.
Summers, votes aye.
Thank you. And I see Ed had to drop doing his CPUC duties. Matthew Vasilakis.
Aye.
Secretary Webb
Aye.
and Vice Chair Hammond.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. This motion passes. Again, really appreciate it. I thought working with the ATA group was great, and we'll be creating another one in January.
Thank you, Sebastian. Thanks for all your work on that as well. All right, item 9, we're almost done. One of our longer meetings. Any items to discuss or to recommend for the Board of Directors meeting later this month? All right, moving on. Any committee member announcements?
Actually, I will reserve my comments at the end because I'm not a committee
Okay.
member. So please, Gary, I saw you unmuted yourself.
And I just raised my hand. I just want to say that 2 Sundays ago, I was with Rita and with Lucas at the EcoFest Encinitas. And so it was, number one, it was good to meet him and it was good to meet the public.
Great, thanks, Gary. Tom?
Yeah, I would like to announce that tomorrow is Air-Cooled Fiesta in Imperial Beach, and we will be having a few vintage Volkswagens that have been converted to electric, and Rad Bikes will be in attendance with electric bicycles, and like to invite you all to come down to Imperial Beach.
Thanks, Tom. It sounds like a nice event. All right, Secretary Webb.
Yes, thank you, Tom, for announcing that. And probably let's message offline because I want to find out where you're going to be so I can introduce my significant other who's into electric bikes and electric modifications. Thanks.
Very cool.
You bet. Be at the plaza.
All right, hopefully you guys connect. And for those who didn't listen to the last board meeting, the net metering letter that we had voted on did unanimously pass, and Laura will be submitting that early next week. They opened it up to other community choice energy programs to sign on. As far as I know, San Jose, I believe they're San Jose Clean Energy. It could be Clean Power. They were signing on.
Clean energy.
Clean energy, thank you. And it also sparked interest from other community advisory committees and community choice energy programs. So I had sent an email to the California Alliance for Community Energy, and I got multiple emails from activists who are now trying to get resolutions inspired by ours. So just wanted to thank you all again for that effort. Let you know that it's having a ripple effect more so than just that board letter that I do believe will be impactful. And the city of San Diego was waiting to weigh in based on what San Diego Community Power was doing. So thank you guys again for discussing that several times at the last many meetings and getting to a point where we were able to put something forward for the board. All right. Oh yeah.
Secretary Webb, I apologize. I had one more thing. It's not necessarily an announcement. It's a quick question that maybe someone can message me offline, but the Emerald Keepers, the green energy and the green folks up in Coronado are pushing their city council and their mayor to join a CCA. And of course, there's a couple here, but I didn't know if someone can send me information that I could share with them, that they could share out to their members. of the club and push their city council and mayor to go green. So thank you.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Tom, is your hand raised again, or was that from your previous comment? Okay. All right, Sebastian, what is your comment?
Yeah, just wanted to add, you all got to meet Rita earlier today, and Gary in person as well as a few others in separate meetings. But she is our Director of External Affairs, so we have decided to move the Community Advisory Committee's strategic outlook within her purview to since it's external affairs related. And so in addition to myself, in terms of being the face-to-face contact, we will also have Rita as an additional staff person who will work with you all. So if for any reason I'm not available and I can't take your questions, feel free to email Rita, and I'll be sure to share her email address with you all so you can have that in your contacts. So yeah, just wanted to share that as well. And she apologizes for having to drop earlier today.
Okay, thank you. And Secretary Webb, your hand still raised from previously? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all. I believe we're at the end of the agenda. Double check. It is. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you all. Hope everyone has a nice weekend, and we'll connect next month if we don't connect before then. Take care.
Chair Hammond, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you,
great
everyone.
meeting. Thanks.